All right, welcome to our Finance Friday Wealth Creation course. This is Jerry, owner, founder, CEO of Wealth Dynamics. I am live here with the one and only Neno Aquino. What's up, Nano?
Hey, what's going on, Jerry? Good to be here.
Awesome. Well, we've got a good topic tonight. We're going to be talking about secured private lending and how to invest in that methodology. Before we dive into it, what we want to do is just cover a couple of basic ground rules, things we hit every week. Nano, do you want to dive into those?
Of course. So a couple of things here. First and foremost, welcome to our Friday. I think for in the past 4 years, maybe one time we missed last week. So it's good to be back. It felt a little strange, at least for me. But nonetheless, here we are. So I want to address a couple of group of individuals that are going to be attending. Some of you are going to be seeing us for the first time. And then you're trying to find out more about who we are. Some of you are going to be clients are trying to follow the game plan, the blueprint as a part of your self, development when it comes to understanding finances. And the third group is going to be, maybe not so much new, but perhaps you're trying to learn again on the right. And there might be some naysayers here and there, but we're not necessarily going to address you guys. No negativity allowed here. So bottom line is, whatever group you are in, I want to bring a couple of points. Number one, have a purpose for attending the meeting, whichever group you're in. What is the purpose for attending? It is Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern time, right? What am I trying to get out of this?
What are you even doing here on a Friday at 10 p.m.?
Exactly, right? So it's like, well, what are you doing, right? So it's like, okay, I got to have that in mind. And then so I got to have that very clear for myself, because he allows me to have the correct viewpoint, the correct listening, why I'm going to be attending, because it needs to lead to an application, which is going to be the second ground rule here that we have when it comes to this. Now, in order for me to be able to apply something, I need to have very clear, and it needs to be very real to me, that the subject can actually be learned, right? So when it comes to this realm of finances, like, oh, it's too difficult, too this, too that. Okay, like, can it not be learned? Can I go through the inconvenience of reading a book, clearing up a few words in a systematic way that is going to help me improve, right? And so that's the second thing for us to keep it in mind. The third thing here is, go ahead and ask questions if you do have them. We're going to be addressing as we go along. The fourth ground rule here, it is be a producer, not a consumer, meaning no negativity allowed. If you are a negative person here on a Friday night, I don't know what to tell you, but bottom line is, we're not even going to address you. And the last thing here is, go ahead and share if this helps you. Now, one of the things that you can actually do this is, we're going to be talking about the book. I don't know if you want me to dive into this, Jerry, or if you want to go through it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Good. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about, it is this book right here. Now, for the people who are somewhat new, right, this is not Jerry's opinion. Jerry has compiled over the past 10 years what exactly did the wealthy do in sequence in order to get where they are, right? This is, again, not based on opinion. This is, again, when it comes to numbers. I mean, we love numbers, right? A mathematical equation in order for me to accomplish enough passive income to cover my saving, expenses, and taxes. What do I need to have it in place, not only as a foundational, some foundational elements, right, but also when it comes to knowledge, in order for me to actually become free. And here I'm going to raise another question. If I'm not financially free, what am I? Right? Because if I'm trying to improve in this realm of finances, okay, then to a degree or another, I'm somewhat tied up to a job, which doesn't necessarily means a bad thing, but I got to realize, right, what's the situation going on in order for me to keep it in mind, what am I trying to accomplish? Again, goes back to purpose. So with that being said, that's all I'm going to say. Otherwise, I'm going to start diving into a few more things here as I'm getting excited. So I'm going to turn that right back to you, Jerry.
Awesome. So guys, we're going to be talking tonight about private lending, okay, secured private lending. And we did put together a PowerPoint to go through tonight. Now, before I dive into this, I want to make sure that we set the ground rules on what we are going to be discussing regarding this. So there's a couple types of private lending. We're going to do part one tonight. We have other weeks that we're going to cover part two and so on. So let me go ahead and get this kicked off here. All right. So first thing first, we hit this last week. Nano, do you want to review this really quick on just what is investing? We don't have to spend a lot of time here, but I just want to bring people back to their attention being on these points.
Of course. So when we look at the definition, here we go back to definition of words, right? When we take a look at the etymology of the word, what does that mean? Investing means to clothe my capital. So and so if I'm clothing my capital, the same way that let's say that I'm clothing myself, I talk to clients, all day. We use the same analogy. I gotta be asking myself the question, okay, do I like it? Do I understand it? Does it fit me? Does it match the occasion? Is it vital? And we gotta make sure that it's not overpriced, right? So very simple, straightforward. I have a polo shirt, right? I like it. I understand it fits me. It does match the occasion. It is vital and is not overpriced, right? So if I, a different scenario, even though I may like this, I may understand, it may fit me, but let's say that I'm going to go for a run, right? It may not even match the occasion, even though the previous ones may fit to the category. So it goes back to the occasion, almost aligns with purpose, right? It goes back to the very first point that we talked about this. So I got to have this in mind when I'm thinking about investing.
And this one, guys, I want to just hone in on one point really quick, because there's people out there that need to hear this. If I don't like it, it's not a good investment for me, right? So let's relate this to surprises. Let's say that somebody, surprises you with something, and I don't like surprises. So when somebody tells me there's a surprise, my attention goes on it, and I don't enjoy the process of that. I'm trying to figure out what is it. Now, when I get the surprise, I might understand it, and it might fit me, and it might match the occasion, and it's vital and all this stuff. But if the very top one doesn't happen, it's not a good thing, right? So same thing with your investing is if you don't like it, don't justify the other aspects of it, right? It's something you've got to actually be like, okay, cool, this is perfect for me. Now, the second thing I want to cover, we hit this last week, was preservation of principal, right? So I'm trying to protect the money that I put in. This is the first and foremost point, is if I lose money, it's the opposite of investing, right? So if I'm putting in money and I'm like, okay, I want to grow it, and I've got this goal to build wealth and financial freedom. If I lost, that literally is a reverse statistic. That's the very antithesis of what I'm trying to accomplish. And there's no way to make sense of that. So this has to be the first point. So when we're doing private lending, we're going to talk tonight about how this preserves our principal, right? Second thing is income. It's got to pay income, right? And we'll talk about why tonight. For me, I'm very big on income investing. If the income isn't coming in, I don't want to be in a deal where I've got to wait and hopefully sell it in the future and maybe make some money, maybe not. I want to be certain, right? Then we've got, after these points are covered, we can draw a hard line here. We've got appreciation and tax reduction, right? These are things that maybe they fit, maybe they don't. It's not going to be something I base my investing on primarily as the focus. It's going to be these top two, and we covered this already last week. Okay, so these are all things that we want to make sure we have in mind as we're diving into this. But the first thing I want to cover is just the definition of private lending, right? So what is private lending? So a private loan is when you take a borrower, right, and you've got a lender, and basically you've got a private deal going on. Let me send a Facebook code to Lexi real quick. Nano, do you want to hit the rest of this slide? I need to send Lexi a code apparently.
Say that again.
Can you hit the rest of this slide? I need to send Lexi a Facebook code apparently.
Of course, yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into this, right? So private lending, it is going to be a loan between, we have a borrower and a lender. Now, where the lender, it is a private individual and not a financial institution. Let's put an example. Let's give an example, right? So it could be, okay, I have this individual is going to be borrowing money, and I am going to be the person lending versus a bank, right? Very straightforward. Now, the borrower, this person here borrowing the money, cannot or does not want to qualify for traditional financing, and it is willing to pay extra interest as an alternative. Now, so let's say the person, it is the borrower, right? Let's say this individual is now trying to, let's say the regular, the financial, the traditional financing. They may have to go to a bank. They may have to go through the process of actually trying to get a loan, and even fall under the realm and the regulations of whatever the bank it is providing. So they may not want this. Therefore, they may look for what's a private lending source. So that's going to be pretty much it here, unless there's something additional you want me to cover here, Jerry.
No, so that's the basic definition of it. Now, with private lending, there's three different types out there. So as we're talking about loans, right? The first one is secured, right? Secured means it's backed by an asset. We have collateral. So when you think of secured, I want you to think of like a mortgage or a car loan or something of that nature, right? So that's going to be the first part of this. The second part is going to be unsecured, right? So unsecured would be like a credit card, right? Something where you don't have anything backing it. You know, there's really nothing as collateral being served. And so that's going to be typically something I'm going to stay very far away from. And then finally is seller finance real estate. This is where I actually buy the property myself. I'm not necessarily lending money. I'm actually lending the possession, right? The property itself. And so seller finance is a little bit different in that respect. Tonight, what we're going to be mostly focused on is secured private lending with real estate, right? So this is going to be kind of the area we focus on and stay in on tonight. Good. So there's two different groups you can lend to, right? You can lend to an individual or you can lend to a fund. And so this is important. Like when I talk about loans and Neno, I don't know if you've run into this before on calls talking with clients, but when you talk about private lending, a lot of people initially have heard them and like, oh, my brother-in-law has a real estate deal he wants to borrow money for, or I've got a friend, or I've got this person. And they immediately think of an individual that they're going to loan money to, which kind of makes sense. That's what we have our experience with banks as, is they loan money to us as individuals, they're corporations. If you're doing it as like an individual yourself, you actually want to flip it, right? And Neno, do you run into that on calls? Do you hear that a lot?
Yeah, sometimes people do have this idea, right? And it's almost like when we think about a previous step before investing is actually minimizing the amount of risks that I'm going to actually bring into an investment deal. So if I'm going to be investing in such a thing, it's almost like a flip of a coin, right? Because as we're going to be covering throughout the rest of the webinar here, it's a couple of things that need to be looked at whenever it comes to a fund, right? Okay, does he have a track record, right? Do they have experience? Have they ever paid on time, right? Do they actually do that, right? Versus my brother-in-law or whoever who may have a great idea, who may have done once or twice, right? And I'm like, well, let me go ahead and show you some of the data. Let's go take a look at some numbers here, right? So from time to time, I do come across people that have that, and I just have to almost like help them become more educated on the subject. And then, hey, take a look at the data. Let me know what you think, right? Whenever we take a look at the numbers, it's kind of like a no-brainer.
Yeah, and the thing, guys, with this is if you're looking at like track record, right, you're typically going to see a lot better track record with a fund. And an individual that's really good at real estate investing, if they're borrowing money and they're doing deals, they're probably not going to stay as an individual for very long. They're typically going to start a fund anyways. So for me, I almost never look at this. This is something I might look at with seller finance real estate, which we won't talk about this week. That's again where you buy the property, you find a family that wants to live there and they make mortgage payments to you. You would then go direct to individual. But if I have capital, if I've got money, I'm going to go direct to a fund 100% of the time. So that's kind of the main thing here is as you're thinking about this, we're mostly talking about funds, right? So that brings up the next question. What is a private lending fund? So our definition on this is it's an investment fund that's done the proper filings. We talk about this all the time. Proper filings with the Securities Exchange Commission. This means that they're not doing something illegal. Okay. Like there's no mincing words on this. If somebody is raising money from investors and they have not filed with the Securities Exchange Commission, they're fully breaking the law. It's 100% illegal what they're doing, right? And so you want to avoid that. If they're not willing to, it's like someone saying they're going to be an Uber driver, but they're not willing to get a driver's license. It's like, bro, like why don't you just get the license? It's going to make us all feel a lot better. Okay, so the Securities Exchange Commission has filings. They've got to go through those. But basically, after that's done, they're professionally borrowing money from investors. Like they're professionally borrowing money from investors. And so then the question is, well, what are they doing with it? And so a lot of times they're purchasing real estate. Okay, they're using the profits they generate from the investments they make in that real estate, and then they're going to pay the lenders back, and then they're going to keep a profit spread in the middle. And so an example of this might be, the funds, they might borrow money at 9%. Okay, that 9% is going to go to an investor. And the reason why they would borrow money at 9% is they know that they can go make 18, right? That's going to be their profit. Okay. And so one of the things that as an investor, I need to be able to wrap my mind around is I need to be okay that my number is 9. right? Like, and a lot of them, they're not going to make 18. If they're borrowing at 9, they're probably not making as much as 18. I know a few people that could pull this off, but most of the time they might be making 12 or 15 or whatever, right? And so I have to be okay knowing that they're making profit, that I'm not getting the whole piece of the pie. And so that's part of being a private lender, is I'm not trying to make the 18. Okay, the 18 is where the work is. I want 9 with no work. And I want dozens and dozens and dozens of those paying me every month, because that's passive income, right? So as you're looking at this, like realize you're going to be this guy, and then whatever their number is, their number, and you got to be okay with that. If it's 18, they're making 9% profit. That's awesome. As long as I get paid, I hope they make money too. Okay, if it's 12 and they're making a 3% spread, like that's smaller, but still I want to make sure that they're making money as well. Otherwise the fund isn't going to be a fund. Right. So I like to point that out, because that can be, a consideration. It's something we grow up with, that we need to have the whole thing to ourselves. We need the whole pie. Now I just need my slice, and I need my slice on my terms. And my terms is that it doesn't take my time.
One thing, Jerry, that kind of comes to mind, it is two individuals, who obviously we're not going to name names, but that decide to do some investments with individuals that did not have the filing properly done. Some of our clients, do you recall?
Yeah, so I think I know what you're talking about. And this is the problem, guys, is when somebody's like investing in a fund that hasn't done the filing, right? It's basically like they're in a position where the fund is doing something illegal. And so if this gets found out, the SEC actually takes over the fund. And now you've got a government managed fund. They're usually going to outsource it to another provider or another fund to manage it. And it's not going to be the same thing you invested in, right? A lot of times, the fund, when they're not registering, there's a reason for that. There's fraudulent activity going on. It could very well be a Ponzi scheme. Like it kind of goes back to, again, the driver's license thing. It's like, why wouldn't you get one? Right? Now, I know some people don't have them and they drive without them, but that's beside the point. Those are people that you probably wouldn't drive with if they didn't have a license. Okay, so this next page, this is basically, you want to look at what are they investing in. If you're investing in a private lending fund, like there's two investments happening. You're investing with them, right? And so they're taking your money and paying you interest. That's your investment. But what are they investing in? And what's generating that return? So like Nano, if you were investing with me and I told you, hey, I'm going to make a 10% interest payment to you, but you had no idea how I was going to make the money, how would you feel as an investor?
Well, not very certain, right? Like, how are you going to do that, right? Have you done it? Do you have the experience? Yeah, there's a couple questions that I'll need to be asking, which is, first, I got to be somewhat knowledgeable, at least to be able to ask some of those questions. I may have the gut feeling, like, how are you going to do that, right? But nevertheless, I should also be taking a look at some additional information, right? Okay, good. Have you ever defaulted? What, again, going back to the track record. So I actually would need to know, right? Like in writing, okay, and what is going to be my protection against, if something were to go south here.
Yeah, and guys, so when you're looking at this, like what I like to look at, if you're taking notes on this, when I'm investing, whatever my income mode is, like if I'm receiving monthly income, I want the fund to be investing in something that produces the same thing, right? So if they're like, okay, I'm going to pay you, interest, let's say a 9% interest every month, then it makes sense to me that they're probably needing to invest in something that's going to pay them at least that, and at least monthly. And so if they're doing something like, let's say, for example, they say, I'm going to pay you 9% monthly, we're doing a flip, right? And we're basically going to buy this property, and in 6 months, we're going to sell it and we're going to make a giant profit. Well, that tells me that they're paying me out of pocket for 9 months or for 6 months, whatever the term length would be. This 9% isn't actually being produced. They're borrowing it. They're hoping they can sell the property. But at the end of the day, if it comes in with worse numbers than they thought, or the margins weren't as great, or whatever the problem would be on something like a flip, my principal is at risk. Okay, my interest is also at risk, because at some point, let's say expenses and repairs were more than they budgeted for, and I don't actually have this income being generated now. Neno, are you gonna add something there?
No. I was reading some of the questions here along that came along. So I don't know if we want to address this in the middle of the webinar, or we only leave it towards the end.
Yeah, let's answer some questions real quick. Okay, so good to see everybody. Jeff says he brought Tanya and her family on here. That's awesome. It sounds like Tanya is interested in grabbing the book. So Nano, if you could connect with Tanya, that would be great. And again, guys, if you're on the webinar and you don't have a copy of my book yet, Blueprints of Financial Freedom, you can get a copy of this. It is $9.99, which basically covers the shipping. We actually lose money on the book, but we want to get it out to you. So you can get the book basically for free. You cover the shipping, which is $9.99. If you go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo, you can get a copy of the book there. So let's answer a couple of questions. Al Lopez says, I'm new to this and reading this book. OMG, my head was turning. That's amazing. Thank you. Okay, good. We have a question from Jamie. Let me bring Jamie on live here. All right, let's see if we can mic up with Jamie. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So I'll go ahead and just read Jamie's question off. So Jamie's question is, what is the process that you use to find these deals? So that's a great question, Jamie. The process that I go through is so I don't work with a lot of funds. So that's the first thing, is I'm not looking for a bunch of new funds all the time. I'm looking at funds that are proven. So for me, I was lucky in the fact that I knew somebody that managed a private lending fund. I've known this person forever. And so I was able to plug right into their fund. I knew they had a track record and I knew that they were going to do a good job. And so, yeah, for me, when that works, I'm not out there trying to find more of them. If that makes sense, if it's working, I'm going to stay with what's working. If it's not broken, I won't fix it. And so that's really the first thing, is if you're investing as a private lender, finding either somebody that's big enough that you know they're solvent, they're going to pay, or it could be both, or you trust them enough. You know that they're going to do a good job. They've got a track record. And so that's what I had, is I had both of those. So that's kind of, as you're going through the vetting process, that's kind of the first thing, is what are the funds or the individuals? If I'm doing this type of investing, it's going to be a fund. And there are a lot of them out there. As soon as you say you've got money to loan out to somebody, you're going to have a bunch of people that are like, hey, I've got a deal, right? So you have to be able to vet that and be able to look at, okay, the first point, did they register and do their SEC filings? If not going to invest with them at all. Second point being, again, either they've got financial strength, or I'm not worried about it, they can prove that to me, or they've got, a high degree of track record and trust. Maybe they're not the giant fund out there, but they've been doing it for a long time. And so because of that, I have certainty and confidence that they're going to do the right thing. Now, as far as deal picking, that's not the part I'm involved in. Once I invest in the fund, that's 100% up to them, right? So I need to know that they know what they're doing, because they're the one that's going to pick the property out. They're the one that's going to be doing all the work, right? And so if they're doing a good job, that's perfect. I get my interest payments. But if they're not doing a good job, that does impact me. That can mean late payments. It can mean defaults. It can mean all sorts of things. So that's kind of how I would answer that question for you, Jamie. And that is one of the benefits that our clients get, by the way, is they work with the funds that I work with, right? So we introduce you to our funds, our vendors. If you want to work with them, you can. And so you don't have to go through that vetting process. You know that, okay, these guys are proven and they do a good job already. All right, we have a question from Roberto. Asks, why do I need to do it through a fund instead of doing it myself? Good question. So first answer to that is you don't. You could do it yourself, right? Now, you could also cut your hair yourself, and you could mow your own lawn yourself and change your oil yourself and do all things yourself. At a certain point, we've got to look at time value of money, right? So if I could do it myself, that's great, but is that the best place for me to spend my time? And so for me, the answer is no. Okay, the thing to realize with real estate investing is it's a game of margins, right? So if I'm borrowing money, let's say at 6%, and I'm going to invest it at 12%, my profit is 6%. That's never going to change. The more time that I invest in this, the lower my rate per hour is. You see that? So the more time I spend on investing, the less profitable it is based on return on time invested. And so for me, I don't want to do it myself just because I can put more time into my business and make more money that way. There's other things I can do. Now, if I don't want passive income, I want active income, then it's like, okay, cool, I could manage a real estate portfolio. But then it's the question of, okay, well, are there better places to make money? Okay, I would say, yeah, there's better places. If I'm going to be an active business owner, real estate portfolio is not probably the best place for me to make the most money, right? You look at the wealthiest people in the country right now, they're not real estate portfolio managers. They own, Teslas and Amazons and Microsoft and those types of businesses that produce a product or a service or a good, and they can mass scale that out. Again, with real estate, I'm limited by how many units I have. Right. So if I have 6 units, I'm only ever going to make enough money from those 6 units based on my rents, based on my incomes. Right. So it's a very limited game. And then I've got to have capital to get into it as well. So those are the reasons I wouldn't do it myself personally. You certainly can. There's nothing wrong with it. But again, at that point, it's active investing. It's kind of defeating the point of passive income. Okay, a couple more questions here. Tanya says, me and my 5 siblings have bought or downloaded the book. Myself and one of the siblings has read the book. That is awesome, Tanya. So Tanya, I would recommend connecting with our team. See if you can get set up with a call. Nano, if you want to connect with Tanya and see if she wants to do a call
Yeah, I'll go ahead
with
and send her a
her
message.
and then any of her relatives too.
For sure.
Okay, so we have a question. What are the benefits of funds? Do you have a product where I can be more in charge? Same kind of question. If you want to be in charge, private lending is really not for you, right? If you want to be in charge, I would buy a fourplex and manage it, put tenants in it, be a landlord, do that whole thing. But if you're looking at a fund, you're okay with outsourcing, delegating, letting other people do the investing side of it, and then you focus your time on what you're good at instead. Okay, we have a question from Mark. Let me see if we can bring Mark on here. All right, let's see if we can bring Mark on. We're live with Mark tonight. How are you tonight, Mark?
Hey, Jerry and Nano, how you doing?
Good, man.
Good. What is your question?
Yeah, Jerry. I want to find out how I could design a private lending deal, with tax reduction in mind. And I do have some private lending deals, and they're basically through like my QRP or solo 401k, and it's not really. It kind of shelters my taxes. It's through a Roth, but I can't seem to figure out how to reduce my taxes with doing private lending deals. Do you have a strategy that you can share with us for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, when you're doing private lending, you're not going to get tax benefits. Let me fix my crazy hair here. You're not going to get tax benefits on the interest income, right? So you have basically your income is going to be just taxed as interest. And so there's not a deduction that comes with this. There's nothing you're writing off against it. So when you're doing private lending, you have to be able to create tax deductions. And this is going to be a little bit different. So when somebody does traditional real estate investing, typically they're going to have deductions. They're going to have depreciation. And they also might be able to amortize some of their expenses. Amortize means spread them out, amortizing expenses and income over a period of time. These 3 things are very conventional to reduce taxes, right? So deduction would be like, let's say I buy a rental property and I have, utility expenses and interest expenses from my mortgage, and I can write those off, right? That would be a deduction. Depreciation, I can write off depreciation against the property as well. I might be able to take, an expense and amortize it over a period of time and stretch the taxes out rather than paying them all up front. This is kind of like combining, if you think about the very first slide, combining, the taxes and also the income, right? Now, you can do this. You can bundle this for sure. I don't like to do it this way. I like to separate them. I'm going to have my investment over here. And the full sole purpose of this investment is protection of principal, and income. These are the main 2 things I'm focused on. Over here, I'm going to have my tax planning, right? And so this is going to be less of an investment, more of a strategy. So I need to have the right tax firm I'm working with so that at the end of the year, I'm actually taking all of this interest income from my investments and I'm sheltering it in through my tax planning, right? So to give you an example of this, Mark, let's say I do an investment deal and I do a private loan, I've got interest income coming in. I could have a setup where I take this money and I run it through an LLC. And then I put that interest income into my solo K as a contribution, right? So this could then be a contribution and I get to write off this interest income and it's now in my solo K. I could also do a charitable trust, right? Where I take the investment itself and it's a private loan deal. And I know that I'm not going to live off the income yet. And I'm just going to keep reinvesting it. And I can take the entire amount and I can place it into a charitable trust, right? That's going to give me a charitable donation in year one. And I can carry that forward if I max that deduction out in that first year. I can get the charitable donation and then all of the money inside that trust is going to grow tax deferred as well. Right. So that's another method. And then the other thing I could do is if I had enough of my passive income coming in, let's say it's making me, $40, $50, $100,000, let's say in a 6-month period or whatever it might be, I could take all that and throw that into oil and gas. Right. And then I can write off 100% of the income. So, and now I've got a secondary asset as well. Right. So I like this better, like separating the two out because I do usually get to own 2 assets. Mark is probably tracking with this. I usually will borrow against my sacred account before I do any of this. So I actually end up with 3 assets, right? So I put the money in my sacred account. I borrow against it. This is asset number 1 to do the investments. The income from the investment or the profit from the investment, I could funnel into, let's say, an oil and gas deal. That's investment number 3. Right? Versus if I did a rental property, I've just got the one thing there. It's just, that's my property and I get my taxes, my appreciation, all of it's in one. So that's kind of the long answer to Mark's question, but that is what I would look at is I would look at a more comprehensive tax strategy. And Mark, if you don't have a great CPA firm for that, reach out to us. We'd be happy to connect you with our team on that. But with taxes, like you have to make sure you've got the people that are going to be aggressive and use the tax code. Everyone likes to say they do tax planning. And then when it comes down to it, 95% of them are just going to be like, Neno, you should put money in an IRA this year. And that's the extent of their tax planning.
Not even a self-directed.
Not even self-directed.
And with this strategy that you just mentioned, right, Jared, this entire breakdown, even like it may sound a little complex, right, if you've seen this for the first time, but everything that Jerry said is here in sequence. In order for the individual to understand, which again goes back to have like once I have the strategy in place, now it's going to be like a very streamlined action plan. Because imagine I'm trying to build a house and I'm like, hey, let me put a wall now. Let me put the carpet now. Now let me put the roof. And I'm trying to wing it, right? Imagine trying to do that. And if we have the strategy beforehand, right? I gotta know what I'm looking for. What is my end goal, right? And this is going to help clarify what we said to begin with. If my goal is to actually build some passive income, fantastic. Let me follow that route. If I want to have more active, right? There was an individual here. Hey, I actually like to have more hands-on. By all means, that's your game, right? But if you want to have a different game, more on the passive side, let me go ahead and follow this strategy. Again, what did the wealthy do? And the strategy is laid out in the book. And I want to emphasize on this for the new people, because if you haven't seen, Jerry, before, right? But okay, just took a look at the strategy right here inside the book.
Yeah, and I want to validate what Nano said. There's nothing wrong with active income. Like you have to have it. It is part of building wealth. You've got to have the triangle of wealth as earn, save, invest. So active income is 100% part of it. But the thing for me is if I'm going to trade my time, it better be good. Right? Like I want to have unlimited potential. I want to be able to earn quickly and I want it to be, very lucrative and something that I'm passionate about doing. And so for me, when I say active income, I wouldn't do rental properties just because it doesn't check those boxes for me. I'm not passionate about, collecting your rent and fixing your toilet or, those aren't things that get me going. Right. And then the numbers aren't there for me either. I think we had a couple more questions, lots of questions tonight. Roberto asks, may opportunity zones be done with private lending? Sometimes, yes. Right now, not traditional private lending. If you go to a private lending fund, generally speaking, you can't do an op zone with that. An opportunity zone, for those of you that don't know, an opportunity zone is where you invest in a property that's in usually a more depressed area. And basically the opportunity zone is going to be something that you invest in, right? You might fix the toilets in it. You might rehab it. You might do different things to like make it nicer. And so if you hit those, it increases the value, it increases the neighborhood, it makes things safer, nicer. And so the government gives tax benefits. So the main purpose of an opportunity zone is if I was to sell an asset, I had a capital gain, I could push that off into an op zone, right? And so I could do that with seller financing generally. I am usually not going to do it with a private lending fund itself. Okay, so I think this is Luis Lopez.
That's right.
Okay, so how do you know if you have the right accountant to deal with all the investments? How do you choose one? So the investments that we work with, that's a great question, are generally going to be like pretty proprietary. So it's not uncommon when someone works with us, they go to their CPA and their CPA doesn't know what the hell they're looking at. Right. It's kind of like, Nano, you have a Porsche, like you take it to a dealer that's not a Porsche mechanic. What is that like?
I mean, they're like, I mean, for one, they may be, bumping their heads. One, I'm going to be asking myself, number one, I'm not going to take there, right? So that it starts there, right? So I'm going to take to the place where it's like design the thing that it's going to, I know for a fact it's going to work well. But let's say if I were to take to a different place, I may, one, it's going to devalue if I eventually try to sell the Porsche, right? Because I'm not having like the maintenance be done at the manufacturer. The other thing is I could actually bump into a problem, because if they do not know how to do the maintenance, now they may appear, to have done the maintenance properly, but it may lead to problems that I may bump into the future. So I don't even go there to begin with.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. So the way that you tell is you want to make sure that you're working with somebody that does tax planning, right? So if you're going to see a CPA and they're just asking like, hey, what did you earn? Right? Like that's something that usually is an indicator. Like they're not going to help you reduce your taxes. Now, if you go to a CPA and they're like, hey, I want to see your last 2 years of tax returns, we're going to file an extension. We're going to look at what actually happened and put a plan together. That's usually how you're working you're working with the right people, right? So like if I'm interviewing CPA firms, one of my first questions is always going to be, what do you save your average client? Right? Nano thought it was a different question. I haven't had a CPA answer my answer to this one. My first question I used to ask CPAs was, is taxation theft? And if they said no, then I wasn't going to work with them. And too many of them said it wasn't theft. So I had to alter it and just say, okay, well, what do you save people on average? We don't have to get philosophical about your views on taxation. I just need to know, what can you reduce the bill by? Right. So, when we work with CPA firms with our clients, we vet them. We have a firm we work with called Tax Hive. And so they're able to save clients tremendous amounts of money, right? They're doing tax planning. The average plan that I've seen them do is about a $30,000 tax saving, right? So those are the things you want to ask, is how much are you saving your clients on taxes? Realize you're working with a planning firm at this point. So speed of a tax return is not what you're looking for, right? It's the difference between going to like a prime steakhouse and McDonald's. At the steakhouse, you're going to wait. Like there's going to be a 2 hour, you're going to wait. You better make a reservation. You're going to be at the table for a while. That's all normal. If you're like, hey, how come it's not done in 10 minutes? Should have went to McDonald's, right? You're probably going to find a finger in your French fries, but at least you get your food fast. Nano doesn't want the fingers in the fries. So the thing that you would look at is those.
To add to that, Jerry.
Go ahead.
To the tax planning is like, one of the things that to help a person understand is like 2 seasons throughout the year, right? Where we have tax filing season and we have tax planning season. So the individual needs to understand that, right? Right now we're in 2022. Right now it is a time to do tax planning season, because whenever we have the fiscal year done, December 31st, then you're done, right? Then it's time to actually file it. So right now we actually need to be very active when it comes to the planning for this year. Right. So when it does come time to file taxes, right, April 15th or whatever the time frame it is for you, then I have done a proactive approach for that. So you'll be more like, I would even add like a year-round basis type of a service, because it is just not, hey, let me go ahead and send my paperwork so I can be done by April 15th.
Yeah, so that's what I would answer on that. So if you're not connected with Tax Hive yet, definitely do so. if you're a client of ours, they definitely are integrated with what we do. So if you're working with Wealth Dynamics, you go to them, they're going to say, great, this part, let's go back to Nano, let's go back to Jerry, let's go back to Kevin, let's go back to the team and get help on this, rather than, okay, we don't know what we're doing, or we've got to go back and forth a bunch of times, or we have to do conference calls to explain to them what a trust is. Like, it's just nonsense. When you get to a certain point, that's not scalable. Okay, one more question I see. On the page, checkout page, there's no box for state and expiration date. Do you have a direct link? Nano can send you a direct link. This is Michael, Michael CR. Nano, if you want to connect with Michael, he wants to get the book. He wants to make sure the page is okay to use though. Okay, good. So we went on a little bit of a segue. I want to jump back into our presentation here. This is going to be a good one. Okay, let me share my screen. All right, so these are 11 important factors to look at when you're doing investing, right? So the first one, we kind of covered this already. So how many years of track record are there, right? So when I'm doing a private lending deal, I want to see at least 5 years of profitability. The fund that I work with in particular, probably the most, they've been doing it for almost 40 years, right? So 5 years is the minimum. If somebody is brand new, you know, even if they're my best friend, I had a buddy of mine that I'm best friends with, he started a fund, and I had to tell him, hey, I can't invest with you till you show me 5 years of profit, right? And so this is something that you want to be able to figure out, what's your number. I like 5 years because the average small business fails in 5 years. A fund is a small business. If they make it past that 5-year hump, for me, I know they're going to be okay. Right now, they're not doing anything super complex. They're borrowing money and at one rate and then investing it at another. The other one is who's managing it, right? So what's their track record like? You know, and this again is like, okay, the fund itself, but then who's managing the fund, right? So I could be like, hey, Nano, I've got this fund. It's been around for 40 years. And you're like, awesome. Who's the manager and how long has he been around? And I'm like, oh, he's brand new. That's not the same thing. Like, how are you going to feel about that, knowing that the manager's only been there 6 months, Nano?
Well, not very good, right? So like, again, like kind of like what you said, a person may get super excited about starting something, and, you know, let's say within after 2 years, they're done with that business, or they come across too many barriers and they fail. Now it could be a problem for me, right? Especially if I have money within that individual that had just started.
Yeah, so that's the main thing, like with management. And if you study people like Warren Buffett, and this is more with stock companies and businesses, then one of the number one things he looks at is the manager, right? Like at the end of the day, and this is so critical with a fund, the manager is the deal maker. This is the person finding the deals, right? So you want to know, who is the manager? What's their track record? Are they going to be around for a while? Have they been doing it for a while, right? Are they taking care of themselves? Are they insured? Do they have all their ducks in a row? Because that's the person that's driving the vehicle, and you're getting in the vehicle with them at that point, right? Now, Nano, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, how much money would you give me if you invested in my fund and you knew that I wasn't paying people?
Zero.
That's a goose egg. No, not even have to think about that one. Sorry, what were you going to say before though?
Yeah, so on this criteria that you just mentioned, as far as who is managing, right? A couple of the questions for me, even to be aware when it comes to some of the mistakes that a brand new investor can be making, is there's a couple of different parties involved when it comes to the investing. We have the investment itself, we have the party managing the investing, which you just mentioned it, right? And then we have me. Now, if I don't know how to measure things, if I don't know the purpose, if I don't have this lined up, I can actually become the liability when it comes to the part of the investing. So one of the things that I want to bring it up to your attention, right, meaning the viewer, it's like, do I even know what I'm looking for? Because I can have the idea, hey, you know what, which happens often whenever I'm talking with people. Hey, I'm going to be investing in real estate, and then I'm going to be buying, you know, putting $200,000 into a duplex or whatever it is, to then potentially remodel, to then put it to rent, which is fine, nothing wrong with that, but that's more on the active side, right? So that's not necessarily investing per se, because whenever I'm taking a look at an investment, I want to have, like, I got to earn, right? When we look at the triangle of wealth, I earn, save, and invest. The investing side it is going to be, again, with the purpose, I got to know the purpose, a scalability of my income. So I got to have that very much clear for myself. If I'm trying to, again, if I'm trying to scale, if I'm not trying to scale, then all I'm doing is earning, which is, again, fine. But I just got to have that very clear for myself, these three components, so I'm not making the mistake that a new person when it comes to investing can make.
And a lot of these mistakes are done because people get excited. It's totally relatable. People get excited. They want to invest. They want to earn income. They want to be able to build wealth. But what ends up happening is they cut corners, right? They're so interested in, I want to be able to be an investor and earn passive income, that they're willing to overlook certain things, right? And there's certain things you shouldn't overlook. So, kind of a stable thing you can tell yourself is don't invest in the back of a van. Right? Like if you feel like you're getting in the back of a van, it's not a good idea. It should be clear as day that this is like a reputable thing. It's normal. It's not sketchy. There's nothing weird about it. And if you see that it's not that way, then don't invest, right? So we're telling you, like, you're not going into a deal where there's not track record. You're not going into a deal where there's not good management. You're not going into a deal where they don't have track record and payment history, right? Like, don't cut those corners just for the sake of getting it done. Okay. So the other thing that we're looking at here is, have they repaid balloon payments? So what is a balloon payment, Neno? Do you want to explain that to people?
Yeah, I was actually pulled up the definition here a little earlier. So I figured that we were going to be covering that. So the balloon payment, it is the repayment of the outstanding principal sum made at the end of a loan period, interest only having been paid.
So this basically means if I put in 100,000, let's say that they're paying me like 12% interest only, meaning I'm not getting any principal back. At the end of this deal, they still owe me 100,000, right? So it's one thing, like 12% of 100,000, that's $1,000 a month. That's one thing to be able to cover $1,000 a month for whatever the term is. It's an entirely different thing to be able to fork up the 100 and give it back. Right. So the fund that I work with, they've been doing this 40 years. They've been doing tons of balloon payments. They're like repaying people's principal. I know that that's happening because their deals are 5-year deals. Right. And so you can, okay, good. So they've done a lot of balloon payments. I know that they actually are investing in a way where they can bring the money back. If you don't have this happening, this is where Ponzi schemes can occur. Right. You guys have heard the stories of Bernie Madoff, right? Bernie Madoff was able to bring in enough new investors to pay the old investors' payments without the new investors knowing. And so long as nobody took their money out of the fund, he was fine. Right? What does that sound like, Neno? Doesn't that sound like Bitcoin?
Well, and also like the like regular banks, right? Because,
like a bank too, a bank run.
A bank, right? Because whenever people deposit money there, right, they're loaning the money out. It's I actually posted the other day like a report, like an official report saying that the money that's there, like banks only have, the FDIC insurance only have 1% to cover, right? If the banks were to go down, which means what to you and I? So whenever we deposit money in the bank, number one, we're no longer the legal owner of the money. Number two, because they're loaning that money out, right? If too many people go at once to collect their money, first come, first serve. If you're late to the party, too bad. And guess what? FDIC insurance don't even have the funds to cover that, the 250 grand. So that is, that basically that, that's what came to mind. Banks as well.
All right. So the other thing that I'm going to look at, I'm going to blow through these ones pretty quick. What percentage of clients reinvest, right? Like if clients are like, we want to see balloon payments, that's fine. If people want money back, they should get it back. But it's also concerning if people aren't reinvesting. Right? Like if it's a good fund, people would reinvest. And so I want to be able to see what percentage of clients reinvest, what types of assets are they buying and where, right? The where one is a big one for me, like, especially if you're down here in I call it the lower 48, just because I'm from Alaska, right? The other 48 states that aren't the Alaska or Hawaii, like there's a lot of areas that are saturated. Everybody's there. And so prices come up, rents come down, rates come down. So there's something to be said for like the fund I invest in is actually in Alaska. That's a removed market. Like there's a lot that doesn't reach Alaska because it's so far off from the rest of the United States. The other one is, what are their loan to value ratios? When they're buying an asset, what's the value of that asset compared to what they owe you? I like to see that there's a 50 to 70% loan to value, meaning if I give them 100 grand, the thing they're buying is worth at least 200. right? And what that means for me as an investor is that if they default, I'm actually going to double my money. Okay. I hope they don't default because I don't want to go through the hassle of foreclosure and whatever, but that gives them a lot of incentive not to, because they're losing 100,000 on a default. And basically, if I have to, I'm going to take it back and make money. What is their profitability? I do want to see that they're making money. I hit this earlier. This is not, let's drain them for everything they have. Like, these are your partners. You want to make sure that they're making money too. Do they have reserves? This is another one. When you're investing, like with private funds, guys, when you're doing private placement funds, a lot of times they do not have to show you a financial statement. That's part of the SEC filing that they do, is they're saying, hey, we're not going to disclose financial statements. They don't have to. I like it when they do. So this fund that I work with, they do. If I ask them for a balance sheet, they're going to send me one, right? So that's another thing, is, are they showing me that stuff? Are they transparent? Who is your point of contact, right? Is it a website or a 1-800 number? Do you have a finder that you can talk to? Do you have an agent, a rep? Do you have somebody you can call and get things handled? Or is it just like you signed up and, you know, you can go and submit through the help ticket and hopefully that's going to cover you, right? So I want to see that there is a point of contact. And then what happens if they don't pay or default, right? Like, if you're investing correctly, hopefully that never happens. It's never a guarantee. Like, even this fund, 40-year track record, it doesn't mean they're going to not default, right? That's not a guarantee of the future. And so I want to know what does happen. And that's the nice thing with investing, is that's all in the contract, right? All of that's spelled out ahead of time. There's no mystery about it. Okay, so I want to give you guys a couple quick examples, some actual numbers here. So there's 3 tiers of investing when you're doing private lending and private investing. There's what's known as a qualified investor. There's what's known as a sophisticated investor, and there is what's known as an accredited investor, right? So a qualified investor, this means that you are out of debt, you're financial literate, you've got money saved up, you're solvent, right? You're basically able to invest now, right? So let's say that I put in my 100,000 on an investment like this. There's something called a cap rate. This is your capitalization rate. This is the income yield that I'm making on this investment. So a 12% cap rate means that my monthly principal and interest payment is going to represent 12% of my principal, right? In this instance, 12% of $100,000 means I'm going to make a $1,000 a month check, right? Now, not all of this $1,000 a month is profit. In this example, it's 8% principal and interest, right? So if you were to look at the payment breakdown, most of it's interest, but there's also some principal I get back every month. So in this example, if I'm a qualified investor, I'm doing a private lending deal, it's a 5-year term. After 5 years, I'll have $133,988.16. During that period, I'll have made $1,000 a month income for 60 months. At month 60, my balloon payment would be $73,988.16. Now, if I'm correct, like if I'm doing this in a smart way, I'm taking this 1,000 and I'm saving that up and reinvesting it, right? So that way I'm continuing to grow this. Now, someone will look at this if they're brand new and they'd be like, well, this is 8, how do I get 10 or 12? We'll get to that, but here's the real thing that's happening. You're brand new, you're getting your own money back every month. So it's de-risking your deal, right? When you're brand new at this, you want to have it set up where you're getting a little bit more principal back every time, because at the end, that balloon payment's not so big, right? So if there was a default, you're not out as much money if you're doing this, right? Because I'm getting the back. Now, the other thing too is I'm still getting the same income, whether I do, 8% principal and interest with a 12% cap rate. Down here, it's 10%. Cap rate's the same. It's still $1,000 a month, right? So my income is the same. The real question is, what percentage of that income is interest? What percentage of that is principal? And what is the balloon payment owed back to me at the end, right? So that's with a qualified investor. Next is a sophisticated investor. This is somebody that has done enough investing to be sophisticated. They've got at least a $250,000 net worth outside of their primary residence. This kind of a deal is going to be closer to like a 10% range, right? So my cap rate, like I said, is still 12%, still making $1,000 a month. This 10% principal and interest split, you can see the difference here. At 5 years, I've got 144 instead of 133. Okay. But here's the other trade-off. My balloon payment's larger, right? So they owe me more money at the end versus on this one, they owe me less money at the end, right? So if I'm a new investor, this is riskier than this. Being owed 84 grand is riskier than being owed 74 grand, right? And so that's really the purpose of that, is as you're more sophisticated, think about this. If I'm sophisticated, I've probably done 4 to 6 deals. Yeah, right. They're all paying me $1,000 a month. So I've got 4 to 6K per month in income. I've got my principal, I've got $400,000 to $600,000 in investments. If I do this now, one of them goes bad, I'm okay. I've still got $500,000 invested. I've still got $5,000 a month in income. Nothing crazy is going to happen to me, right? Now, finally, is accredited. Accredited means I've got $1 million net worth outside of the value of my primary residence. On this one, it's 12% cap rate, but it's also 12% interest only, right? So at the end of 5 years, I've got 160, right? $1,000 a month coming in, but my balloon payment is the 100,000, right? And so this is really what I've got to look at is as I get bigger, I can take on more risk. More risk represents I get less principal back every month. Is it nice to get the higher return? Totally. But it's not going to be like a guarantee. The guarantee here is my balloon payment. That's what I'm owed at the end, right? So I want to hit that just to give you some reality on what you might expect with this. Neno, did you have anything to add on this slide?
No, one of the things, right, as far as the definition of the word qualified investor, the reason for that being is because there are going to be some qualifications along the way, right? And then some of the other content that I had been studying is that the reason for that being is, what is the word that I'm looking for? Is it counterparty
risk?
That's it, right? So they're going to be looking at to basically be making sure that we're not bringing in a risk or a liability to the deal, right? So that's why we have that in place, which is when we think about this, right? We have a fund, they're doing their thing. And something that I mentioned in the a little earlier is if I don't know like the purpose, how to measure, if I'm insolvent, I have debt, I'm not, I'm not properly insured, I could actually be bringing a risk to the fund, which whenever like it's not very good look, a good thing for me to have, right? It is not just a matter of, hey, I have 50 grand, right? What about if I'm not properly insured? What about if I have a lot of debt? Because that could actually entail that a risk to the fund. Because let's say if I lose my job and I'm unable to pay, I don't have 6 months of reserves. That's a problem, right? So anyway, so that's what I like to add here.
Yeah, and so that's really what we focus on. Now, there's a couple ways to take action on something like this. One of the easiest ways to get started as a private lender is if you have an old retirement account, right? So if you've got an old retirement account with a past employer, you actually can roll that over into something called a self-directed IRA. And you're able to do stuff like private lending. And that means you can take your money from Wall Street, get back control over it, and then have that start producing passive income inside your IRA, right? So this is going to be probably the easiest way if you have this. You can do this with an old 401k, an old IRA account, whatever it might be. Now, the other way is to contribute to a sacred account with your life insurance policy, borrow against that, and then invest the borrowed money. So if you take a policy loan, you can do the investing we just talked about. So let's say you're making 12% on your real estate. Well, you can also be making 3 to 5 on top of that with your life insurance, right? And so that just gives you that much more to go with as far as rate of return is concerned. The other thing you can do is you can actually buy gold, and then you can borrow against the gold and invest that into the private lending deal, right? Gold is going to be a higher return than life insurance. So if we look at life insurance and the picture we just looked at, the investing deal might pay me 12% interest. Well, I might make 8 to 12 also with gold. Is it riskier? Definitely. Gold can go up and down in price. Life insurance can't, right? But over the long term, there's definitely more room for profitability there. So that's another option. Okay, the third one I can do is I can use a home equity line of credit. I can borrow against my home equity. Key here is called first position, right? So I'm actually replacing my mortgage with a home equity line of credit, right? A home typically appreciates over the long haul at about 4 to 6%. So if I'm earning this in appreciation on my house, I'm also making 12% on my private lending deal, then I have a pretty good return as well, right? So these are always like, I told you guys, like for me, the appreciation is not a big deal. I don't like mixing it all together. The taxes, I can do that separately on its own and do a better job than trying to combine it with my real estate. The appreciation, same thing. I can separate that out by using life insurance, gold, or the home equity line of credit, get the appreciation separately, and then just have control over the income itself, right? So we're kind of piecing it together instead of jumbling it all together in one. Neno, what is your thought on this last one, investing with cash?
You're wrong thinking, so that means I could actually, if I were to invest with cash, which, I could, I'm actually in a way shooting myself in the foot, because if I put this the cash into some of the places that you mentioned, either life insurance, gold, or home equity line of credit. Once I put money there, right, I can now collateralize it, take a loan against it, put in an investment. I can actually make my investment grow 20 to 30% faster. And again, economics is also a game of speed, right? So the faster that I can accomplish my goal, the faster I actually can get to becoming financially free.
Yeah, so guys, that's what we want to cover on this. I want to jump into just some final questions. Again, if you have not gotten a copy of my book, go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo. Okay, you can get a copy of the book for free. You cover shipping. We'll send it out to you. That also does come with a coaching call with Neno or Rodrigo on our team. All right, so let me just check our questions and comments, see if we have anything to answer here before we wrap things up tonight. Jamie asks, how do we get started investing in these funds? Do you just refer us to them, they work out the deal directly, or do you help us with making the deal? So Jamie, reach out to my team. If you're ready to invest, we'll go over that with you. For those that are ready to invest, we do connect you with the fund. With some of them, we usually are acting as what's called a finder. So we actually work with you. We're kind of your liaison between you and the fund. And so that's something we definitely can help with. Have you ever taken a second position with a personal guarantee? No, I have not. I usually like first position. Position relating to, like, if you've got several lenders in line on one property, right? You can have, let's say, 100% loan to value. Well, the first position guy might be 80% of that. The second position might be 20. And so the first position guy, if there's a foreclosure, he takes over the house. He's got to pay the second guy. Right. The second guy is kind of relying on the first guy making those payments. Nothing wrong with it, Mark. You can do second position mortgages. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It is a little bit more risky depending on the income and the loan to value ratios. Good. Let me just check Facebook real quick and see if we have any comments there. Good. So I don't see anything on Facebook. I do want to remind you guys, like, as you're investing, like I said, the main things here. Oh, we have a question here on rollovers. Michael asks, is there a minimum amount that is recommended for investing, like 50 or 100? So generally 50 is the minimum. Whether you're doing like a retirement plan or cash, usually 50 is going to be the minimum. If you're borrowing against life insurance or gold, you do have to keep in mind, you're not going to be able to borrow all of the funds you put in. So if I buy gold, I can borrow 75% of it. So if I'm putting 50 into a deal, I actually need to buy about $70,000 worth of gold. Okay. So kind of think with that. That way you're planning for that as you go into it. So Nano can connect with you on that. So guys, I want to wrap up on this note. Basically as you're investing, the two main things here is don't cut corners. Right? Like, do this the right way. You can always make more money and save more money. But once you lose it, it takes twice that to bring it back. Right? So your concern should be protection of principal. Okay. The second thing is income. Right? Like, think about it like a plot of land. Like, if you're going to buy land, right? Like, you can have it just sit there, no house, no nothing on it. Or let's say you were like going to put a farm on it. Like, you actually get it producing crops or yielding something. You plant a whole bunch of corn on it. Right. And you know that that's going to generate income for you and you can use the corn. Right. So that's something that's going to give you a yield and income on top of what the land does by itself versus just having the raw land with nothing else. So guys, we're going to wrap up, I think, on this note. I don't see any other questions. Again, if you don't have the book yet, go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo. Nano, you have Money Monday coming up. You want to tell us a little bit about what your call is?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the book Liar's Poker, and we're going to be diving into how Wall Street works, how they make money. One thing that I like to mention to people on an ongoing basis, we know the one thing that is going to be guaranteed for sure whenever you have money with Wall Street is fees. Additionally, right, whenever we lose money in the stock market, the loss does not come back. I lost money because, it's now I have what I have. The question is, what am I going to do with it? And money lost is never made back. It is just made or lost. So if you're actually tired of doing that, you should hop in on the call, learn a little bit more. But even more, let's go ahead and take some action.
And I talked about investing in the back of the van, you know, like you guys have seen when you drive by and there's like the creeper vans and the kidnapper vans. That is Wall Street. Like when you give money to Wall Street, they are the creeper van. Like, you know, that's what's going to happen, and you know that's what they're up to. So Nano, the book Nano is going through, if you've never read it, it is very crazy. Like it's almost unbelievable, some of the stuff that's in there, but it's true. Like it's actually what does happen in Wall Street. So yeah, so make sure that you guys check that out. That's going to be 4 p.m. on Monday. Otherwise, guys, I think we can wrap up here. Have a great weekend. If you have questions, reach out to our team. Again, get the book if you haven't yet, jerryfetta.com/B2F promo. Jeff Mitchell is asking Liar's Poker. That book is Liar's Poker. That's correct. So guys, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later.